Chapter 4, this is on individual behavior. This is one of the more interesting topics, in my opinion, in managerial economics because we're trying to look at individual behavior, knowing full well that each individual may make different choices given different alternatives. So how can we as economists pull that together and create a theory that ultimately leads to a demand curve? So that's what we're trying to do today, is to see if we could understand how individuals decide which products to buy and what happens when situations change. And that's what today's topic is about. It's about individual choice and the use of indifference curves and budget lines in order to predict what a consumer would do given a set of choices. Our learning outcomes are, first, that consumer behavior reflects their preferences and their opportunities. And that is basically meaning that they have a budget and they have certain preferences. Secondly, is that it will change based on the income and price changes. As products change in prices, a consumer may choose different options. Third is there's an equilibrium where we achieve maximum satisfaction because that's what we seek, maximum satisfaction. Number four is what happens when we have changes in the price of goods offered or in the income level that the consumer has. Next is, can we use indifference curve analysis to change consumer behavior and their choices? You can imagine marketeers try to do that all the time. And we'll look at a couple of examples of how that is done. And finally, how do we aggregate from one individual person buying one thing to buying different things at different prices, and then aggregate across all people to get at a market demand curve? So we're going to go from individual choices all the way up to market demand today. So the first thing to understand is that consumer behavior reflects what are their preferences and what are their opportunities. Preferences are what are their trade-offs between different products. Secondly is how much money do they have? They can't afford everything they may want. So we now have to have the interaction of preferences and your budget. The properties of consumer preferences that we'll see throughout this use of indifference curves are as follows: that it's complete, that there are definitive choices. They either want A or B. Secondly is more is better, so that if we have the choice of one item or two of the same items, we'll take two of the same item. Third is there are diminishing marginal rate of substitution. What does that mean? It means that you'll get satiated. Oh yeah, I love a glass of wine, but do I really want 20 glasses of wine? So that at some point I said, no, I'll skip the wine and give me some bread. Right, so that shows that there's a marginal rate of substitution that changes as we consume more of product A. We'll start finding more preferences for product B. And that's something that's natural. I think it's intuitive, maybe not with the words of marginal rate of substitution, but maybe satiation. And finally, transitivity. If we have three bundles, A, B, and C, if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. Sounds like algebra, doesn't it? But it deals with individual choices as well. And these are the rules under which we will then build indifference curves and try to predict consumer behavior. So let's start with what it looks like. Indifference curve looks like this, which the curve represents this rate of substitution, changes as we get more and more one item. And we have on the left axis, the vertical axis, good Y, and on the horizontal axis, good X. And it shows the trade-offs of what we would take to be the same level of satisfaction. So think of a curve as a level of happiness or satisfaction, because when we add more curves, we're getting happier and happier, or more and more satisfied. So what we're going to seek to do in this analysis is try to find the highest level of satisfaction that is possible to a consumer given the choices.